Stop scrolling, press play. Welcome to another episode of Therapeutic Moments Podcast with your host, John Trey Mitchell. And we are back with another moment that heal, moments of healing. Man, I just want to say I'm so grateful to be here today, to be able to share something with you again, to be able to give you some knowledge, give you some nuggets, give you some hope, give you some peace, give you some joy, allow you to rest and sleep. I just want to come to you right now and let you know that you're not alone, that God is right here with you. God is standing by you, and He got a special plan in place for you. Yeah. He got a special plan in place for you. Right now, it may be dark and it may be cloudy, but the sunshine is going to come through. It may not look the way you want it to look, but just know that ultimately, that God want to see you through. It may not look as if you're going to win, but just know that God has already given you the victory. I want you to dig deep right now and give yourself another chance. You can give yourself another chance. I know you talk yourself out of it. I know you haven't given yourself a fair shot. But I want to let you know that at the end of the day got to end. And at the end of the day, you have what it takes. So I just want to come on this episode right now and just tell you that it's go mode. What are your hopes? What are your dreams? What are your future? I say that every single time. What are you believing in? When you find out what you're believing in, I want you to figure out different ways of doing it. Because when you figure out different ways of doing what you want to do, doing what you have to do, then you're going to find joy in it. Then you're going to find a reason to keep on doing it. It don't matter who try to stop you. It don't matter who knock you. It doesn't matter who lie on you, ostracize you, criticize you, scrutinize you. Just know that you going to get to the place that you're supposed to be at. You're going to get to the next level. But don't look at this level right now and think that this is the only level. It's levels to it. And once you pass one level, you're going to the next level. That's how you got to look at it. Once I pass the test, then I'm going to get to the rest. Once I conquer my fears, then I'm going to know that my help is near. When I figure out who I am, then I'm going to be able to conquer everything that I say I can. Man, I like the way I just said that, man. Because I know that it just takes a little bit of faith. It takes a little bit of hope. It takes a little bit of belief. The faith the size of a mustard seed. You can move a mountain. And that is where we're going to begin on this episode, on this pod today. And I'm going right now I'm going through a faith series right now. I did a love series and I conquered that thing and we went through that, and then I just started a faith series. The last episode was Fully Persuaded. So if you ain't got a chance to check out the Fully Persuaded episode, I need you to go check that thing out, because I'm telling you, you hear me? God fully persuades us every single day. And it's not a thing that God don't know. It's not a thing that God won't pull you through. It's not a thing that God is going to leave you here to figure out on your own. God orchestrates all your steps. The steps of a good man is ordered by the Lord. You hear me? So God is ordering your steps, and we're going to talk about another on this episode right here. On this faith series, the title of this episode is Even When I Don't See. Even when I don't see. So many people looking for God. They may not be able to find God. Are they seeking after God and they don't even see that He is moving? They don't even see that God is working things out for them. They don't see it. Have you ever been in a moment where you didn't even see God moving? No matter how many times you prayed, how many nights you stayed up crying, tears on a pillow, You calling people asking for help to give you a word of belief to talk you off the ledge. And you want to believe, but you don't see that God is moving. Even when I don't see. Even when you don't see, you do see. Yeah. You got to say that. Even when I don't see, I do see. Let me say some words that's on my heart. Even when I don't see, I do see. I know that there's darkness all around me, but it's plain to me that God is always near me. He rocked me in his arms, and he always sustained me. I know that God has a special plan for me. I may not know what's next on my journey, but I know that he always thinking of me. I love God so much because he may not always tell me what's next, but he knows what's best. And a lot of times we can get so comfortable in looking at God, looking for God in one way, in the same places that we may have found him the last time. And God probably already moving in a totally different way. Have you ever been comfortable seeking God in the same way? Now we always have to pray. We always have to fall on our face and tell God, thank you for everything that you're doing and what you're going to do, where you took me from and where you're going to bring me to. But we got to know that God is a strategic God. He is tactful. He's tactful. Because even when I don't see, he's moving. Even when I don't see, I gotta find out how God is moving now. I may not be able to trace his steps, but I can feel him. I may not be able to feel him, but then I can see how he moving in somebody else's life. And I want you to open up your mind to be able to see God in totally different ways. And you know it's hard, yeah. It's hard to see God when you're so used to seeing him one way. It's hard to see God as a healer if he never needed healing. It's hard to see God as a restorer if he never been broken. It's hard to see God as a way maker if he never needed a way to be made. It's hard to see God as a mind regulator if he never needed your mind regulated, if he never been in your thoughts. It's hard to see God in certain ways if you never experienced something. So a lot of times we say that, God, I don't want to go through anything. I don't want to go through it, God, because if I go through it, then I won't glorify you and I won't magnify you. But it's usually when you're going through something, when you go be able to really see God really working. Yeah. Because God ain't always on the mountaintop. Sometimes God is in the valleys. Sometimes God is in them valleys. Yeah. Sometimes God is in them valleys. He's in the dark times. When the moon is out, when the dark skies is out, that's and you see God because he'll send the stars. Yeah. Yeah. That's when you see God. Sometimes you see God not with your own sight, not because you see him moving. Sometimes you see God when all hell done broke loose. When it's chaotic. God, you can see God because he'll make you calm in chaos. Yeah. Whenever it's pain, you can see God because you will still keep on going. God will work through you. That's how you can see God. Let me just tell you how you can see God, because a lot of times we think that we can see God whenever he's giving us the money, the cars, and the clothes. But sometimes God will show up whenever it's pain, headache, heartache, confusion. He'll show up and make you the opposite of what that is. That's how you'll be able to see God. No matter how many times I call on him, he is always there. He is never afraid to show himself and show himself that he is real. And he's never afraid to show me that he cares. Yeah. He's never afraid to show me that he cares. It's usually whenever people around me don't care for me, that's when he'll show himself to me. I want to look for you, God. I want to see your face. Sometimes God show up when you least expect them, but sometimes God show up in in the problem. That's how we see God. That's how we see him. Because sometimes we want God to immediately scoop us up like Chunky Monkey, but sometimes God don't do that. Nuh-uh. God don't do it. God don't do it. God don't always scoop us up, because sometimes God want to develop us in the processes. And I talked to you about this. If you got a chance to listen to the last episode, I want to talk to you about sometimes God develop us in the processes. He develop us. He works out some things in us. He'll show us himself in us in the midst of the problem. How well do you handle the conflict? How well do you deal with confusion? How well you deal with calamity? How well you deal with the things you're afraid to talk about? How will you deal with it? And we're going to talk about how to deal with the doubt today. We're going to talk about how to deal with that unbelief. On this episode, we're going to talk about how to deal with the unbelief. We already been dealing with it already. We already been talking about it already, but we're going to talk about it a little bit more. And is it wrong? Is it wrong for you to feel the way you feel? Is it wrong for you to feel that, God, I don't see you, so you're not working? The agony of him not showing his face. Well, God, you not gonna show up for me because you never showed up this far. God, I've been praying for this for years. You didn't show up. But I want to let you know that if you hold on, you experience his amazing grace. You experience his amazing grace. And it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. So I talk about we're gonna talk about doubt. And this faith series is so important because a lot of biblical heroes experience doubt. Experience if God was who he was. Experience, did God really raise up these people from the dead? Did God really, did what he did? Is Jesus who he is? Is Jesus who he is? And we're going to talk about a special brother by the name of Thomas. People call him Doubting Thomas. Other people call him Twin. Twin, where have you been? Yeah. Thomas. People call him Doubting Thomas because he doubted if Jesus was resurrected from the grave. 3 days in the belly of the whale. 3 days in the cave. 3 days in the grave. Jesus did it. Jesus overcame the world. Jesus healed the sick and raised the dead, and Jesus forgave those who despitefully persecuted him. Jesus seen the good in people, even when they did bad to him. Jesus seen the good. Yep. Jesus was the perfect example of what right looks like. Jesus was it. Jesus is it. Jesus always will be it. Jesus is the perfect example of how we're supposed to love. When we see Jesus, we see how we're supposed to love. When we are exemplifying the epitome of Jesus' lifestyle, we're supposed to love people. We're supposed to do what Jesus did. And I could tell you something. If you see what true love is, then you go see Jesus. And if you see Jesus, then he gonna show you who he is. And so Jesus said to Thomas, so you believe because you have seen with your own eyes. But blessed is the man that believeth even though he don't see. And that's coming from John 20, chapter 28 verse. I like the Message version when it says that Jesus. So you believe because you've seen with your own eyes. Even better blessings are in store for those who believe without seeing. Hmm. Now that's a conviction and a challenge. God gives us God gives us the conviction and the challenges in our life to help us to be able to not only be um uh, in our thoughts, but allows us to be able to seek Him with all of our heart. He not only makes us think, but He allows us to grow. When we think, we grow. When we take the time to really take dine with Him, we're gonna be able to grow with Him. We're gonna be able to eat and sup with Him and be able to grow and to get better. And as I was thinking about this text, I kind of wondered, what would have happened if Thomas not like not looked at God in his own sight, but with God's power and might. You know, Jesus said that in the Message version. He said that he said, Thomas, even better blessings, even better blessings go be that for you. If you not look at it with your own sight. I kind of wonder, Thomas, why didn't you just look at why you just didn't look for Jesus spiritually? Thomas walked with Jesus. He talked with Jesus. He was there with Jesus. He seen Jesus perform. And Thomas was at a rock and a hard place. And he wondered, did Jesus really raise from the dead? He seen his brethren. He seen the brethren, the other disciples, and they had a first glimpse of Jesus. Or to Thomas, he thought that he seen that, man, they got a chance to experience Jesus raising from the dead. So I don't know if I should believe, because I don't even see him. Now, this is kind of ironic because Thomas experienced Jesus doing great works. Thomas experienced Jesus raising Lazarus from the dead. So you would almost imagine that Thomas should have believed that Jesus was resurrected from the dead. Yeah. And I know it was hard for Thomas, because Thomas got used of Jesus always being there. Thomas got used of Jesus healing, setting free, delivering. Thomas got used of Jesus being around him and doing things. You know, I could almost imagine that when you walk with somebody for that long, you start to study their pattern. You start to see that, well, when Jesus going to the mountaintop, he coming down and he teaching. He going up to the mountaintop, then he coming down and teaching. He going up to the mountaintop and he coming down and teaching. It was imperative that Thomas seen Jesus for in the same way, that seeing Jesus in the same way. It was imperative that Thomas seen Jesus do the same things over and over again. And he studied Jesus' pattern. He got comfortable. So I could almost imagine that, man, well, it was okay. Thomas like, well, I want to know for sure if this is who Jesus is. Did Jesus be resurrected? Is this true? What Mary Magdalene and the disciples were saying, is this true? That the stone was rolled away from the grave? Is it true? I've been walking with Jesus this long. I mean, but Jesus said that he was gonna raise up from the dead too, though. Jesus said that after 3 days he was gonna rise up. But you could almost imagine Thomas was hurting that my friend, my brother, the master was taken away from me, was taken away from him. Thomas was hurting. A lot of times we hurt whenever Jesus don't show up in the same way that we know him to show up in. We be hurting sometimes because we got used to God showing up in the same way. But a lot of times we got to realize that God is going to show up in different ways every time. God may not show up in the same way. You got to be optimistic though. You got to know that. But that God's always gonna show up. He gonna always do some things different. He always gonna do some things different. Yeah. Yeah, God gonna show up. It's not about if he gonna show up. It's not about when he gonna show up. Sometimes we get caught up in how he gonna show up. We get caught up in that. How you gonna show up this time, God? We getting caught up in familiar faces. Yeah. We want familiar faces to bless us. We want the job to give us the money. That's the blessing. So we want God to show up in the same way over and over again. We look for that type of blessing. We look for it. We look for it. Yeah, we look for it. And Thomas doubted. Thomas doubted that Jesus rose from the dead. He doubted Jesus rose from the dead. He didn't understand. He didn't understand how can Jesus be resurrected after death. He didn't understand why. Why would he show himself to his brethren but not him? It's Thomas. A lot of times we don't understand. We don't understand why would God allow us to suffer? Why would God allow us to go through what we go through? Why would God allow it? And we ask God the questions. And we say, Jesus, is you real? Jesus, will you show up? 8 days later, from the time that the disciples saw Jesus, was whenever Jesus showed up to Thomas. And he told Thomas, I want you to feel me. I want you to feel my hands. And I want you to feel my side. So sometimes we will never be able to experience God until we are faced with a moment that we gotta really tap in. 8 days later, that's a long time. If I could do the math, it's 24 hours in a day. 8 times. That's if I could do the math, 8, 2, 3 times. It's 190 some hours. 190 some hours that I had to wait to see God show up. It was 8 days. 8 days. 8 days. Yeah. 8. Ooh, this is so important. Let me teach you real quick, because 8 is a number of new beginnings. So sometimes God gotta let things in order for better things to begin. Sometimes God have to allow things to end for him to show up again. Sometimes God has to allow things to end for him to give you himself. Sometimes God have to allow things to end for you to begin. For you to see him differently. For you to experience him differently. 8 is a number of new beginnings. Yeah. He may not come when you want him, but he's right on time. He may not show up when you want him, but he is right on time. I know you're looking for God to do something for you in your life. And it may look like it's dead. It may look like it's never going to come to existence. But I want to let you know that God may not show up when you want him, but he is right on time. And I want to speak to you. I want to speak to your life and say that you will begin to see God in a new way. You will begin to see God show up in your life. All old things have passed away. Behold, all things have become new. I want to speak to you and tell you that although it didn't look like it was going to come to pass, it will come to pass. Although the relationships ended, the better relationships are going to show up in your life. Although people walked away in your life, better people will come into your life. Although it didn't look like it was going to work out for you, it's going to work out for you. I want to speak a word in your life that All hell may be breaking loose, but I guarantee you that peace is going to come to you. Yeah. I want to tell you that God is near. I want to tell you that have no fear. Because God, He's steering. He's steering the boat. He's guiding your path. Just like Thomas didn't see, but God was walking to him. God met him. Even when you don't see, God is meeting you. God is walking in your direction. Even when you don't see him, God is orchestrating. God is moving. God is using you to get to your blessing. Whenever you don't see God, it's because God is absolutely using you to get you to the place that you're supposed to be at. That's how good God is. He takes what the enemy meant for evil and turns it around for good. He's turning it around. He knows what he's doing. He knows what he's doing. 8 days later, Thomas was wondering. 8 days later, Thomas was in doubt. 8 days later, 8 days later, Jesus showed up. 8 days later. 8 days. 8 days later. In 8 days, God just may show up for you. In 8 days, God may turn it around. In 8 days, God gonna do something for you. In 8 days, for somebody, in 8 days, God is gonna show up for you. The same way he showed up for Thomas. In 8 days, God is gonna show up and he's gonna provide a miracle for you. He's gonna do it for you. 8 days is a number of new beginnings. So in 8 days, God is gonna do a new thing in your life. Do you believe it? In 8 days, God is going to work it out for you better than you can work it out for yourself. In 8 days, I want to tell you, in 8 days, whew, because it's new beginnings. It's new beginnings. Yeah. This episode right here was one right here, man, because I've been learning that I don't always have to see it with my own eyes. But I'm going to put on my spiritual lens and I'm going to look at it from a totally different angle. I'm going to switch on my perspective. Because when I switch on my perspective, I'm going to be able to see God in a totally different way. Yep. Because even when I don't see, I do see. I got to make a choice, though. I got to make a choice. I want to let you know that you got to make a choice to see God differently. You got to make a choice to believe again. You have to make a choice. You have to make a choice to give God back his word. If God said it, he's going to perform it. If God said it, he's going to come through. If God said it, it will come to pass. Yeah, it's going to come to pass. God loves you. God loves you. And he'll allow you to explore all of your options for him to step in. That's the type of God we serve. That when we come to the end of our rope, we come to the beginning of his. Yeah. I love you. I'm rooting for you. I want you to take the blinders off and tap in to what God has for you. Because even when you don't see, you gotta see. Because God is in the details. And that concludes another episode on this Therapeutic Moments podcast, even when I don't see. I love you, and I'm rooting for you. Peace.